Today we will be appreciating something about the military tactics of the East India Company or Britishers in specific in India in the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th and 19th century. We have always been talking about positives of our ancestors and attributing our failures to our problems. At the same time, it is very essential to study the other side and its good points and inculcate those in our arsenal. And this is something that we can achieve where we appreciate the other side and do a Purva Paksha. That means study their side of the situation. The Britishers came to India as traders and their strength was their navy or the merchant navy at that time. Initially, they did not interfere in the political or military scenario and would get license or permission from the local ruler to carry out their trade. They would pay handsome amounts or tribute to the king so that their trade works out smoothly. Their caravans are not looted or stopped or otherwise hindered, so that the movement of goods in and out of India, or more specifically in and out of the docks or ports, continues. Slowly, they studied the situation around, maintained great records, and passed on this information to the next generation of officers, next to next, and so on. And this is something that they did diligently through the centuries. Also, this information, they made it available back home for dissemination. So today we will take up two salient features of their tactics, which were like out of box for India. Number one was the standing army. Britishers were the ones who brought in the concept of regularly paid, regularly exercising military that was working 365 days a year. Till then, a multiple number of options were available. One was the mercenaries, which happened with marauders who were coming to India. They would announce that they were going to India, and small warlords or even individuals who wanted to get money, get jewelry, would join their army in hordes, and these would be the mercenaries. On one side, they lent strength to the army. On the other side, they were driven by the greed of whatever they could lay their hands on. Second was the valorous warriors who would spend their own money and resources like horses, weapons, cannons maybe, and join the army. Also, there were the devoted warriors who did it for the sake of their country or their location or their pradesh. There were also professional soldiers, but the number of professional soldiers was very limited. Military was considered to be a noble profession, and many able-bodied young men would join the military. But keeping a standard military or standing military all through 365 days and paying them monthly salary, monthly fixed salary, was not so much of a norm. This was the norm that was brought in by the Britishers. And in Marathi it is called as Kawayeti Fauj. So in the peace time, the army would be trained, and in war time, if any, they would be utilized. Their main function was defending the garrisons of the British and defending the caravans of the goods. The second and most sinister or most intelligent part was that of military attaché. In India, till then what used to happen was there would be a war between two kings or two kingdoms, and one king would win, the other would lose. They would go for a compromise, and in which it would be mandatory for the losing king to pay a tribute to the winner. But then, because of just the war, and the war had just been over, there would hardly be any money. He would give what he could afford or what he had. But as both sides had lost in terms of money and resources, the losing king would not have anything at hand or anything much at hand to give. So he would promise, or he would cut out some area, and he would promise that 1/4 of the production of agriculture from that area would be given to the winner at a later date, that is after at least 18 months to 2 years. This should also, if it is a port, the income also would be in terms of taxes, but again it would be promised at the end of a year or 18 months minimum, and the winner would go back to his kingdom. The other king in the meanwhile would start mobilizing his forces again, and somehow in the first year would delay the payment, and in the second year would have his army and would say, I don't pay, let us battle. And this was a very, very recurrent scenario. Raghova Dada was one of the greatest warriors from the Maratha side, and he went up to Attock. So basically he captured or he won over most of the kings in North India, right up to the borders, Punjab borders. But every single time that Raghova Dada went on his campaign, they would be uncomfortable back home. The reason is, every campaign he would spend a lot of resources, and when the other king showed his despair and his inability to pay, Raghova Dada would make conditions very, very easy. And then the money would come back maybe next year, maybe in 2 years, or it would not even come. Many kings would renege on their promises, and the loan burden on the Marathas would increase. There was no other way for them but to mobilize their forces, march against the enemy, and make the enemy pay. But again, the same story would repeat. Long drawn war, enemies defeated to some extent, but a lot of resources are spent which are not coming back. Just to give you an example, the Nagpurkar Bhosles had to fight for 10 years against the Nawab of Awadh to extract tribute from them, which was due to the Marathas. What did the Britishers do? Whenever they had a war and they won it, what they would do is they would appoint their military attaché at the king's place, and this one would be stationed there permanently. He would be a captain or above position, a military personnel, and he would have a good enough army with him. The army was of Britishers, but the payment was done by the king to this captain, who would distribute the payment to the soldiers. So it was a British army which was kept at the loser's place, and the loser was not allowed to create or regather or mobilize his forces again. As a result of which, every single thing that was happening in the kingdom would go back as information to the Britishers, and on the other hand, having no army of his own, the king would be forced to utilize the British army to do the day-to-day things of even tax collection. And as a result of which, every single thing was known to the Britishers, and as soon as the tax was collected, they would ask for a portion of it and not wait till the end of the year. Also, by doing this, they had put to rest the possibility that the king would think of rebelling. This was the masterpiece of British thinking as of that time. So, summarizing, the two good things that the Britishers did better than other kings of that time, one was having a military attaché at the other kingdom, and second was keeping their interference in the politics or the politics of war to the extent of getting their interest paid. Namaskar.